The Pacific Rim is a region in Asia that contains China, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia. It has very varied geography, but there are some similarities. One of these similarities in the Pacific Rim is mountains. Mountains are very important because that is where many of the rivers start, and all of these rivers then feed into the ocean. All of these countries have mountains and mountain ranges. China has the Himalayas in the south. Korea has the Taebaek Mountains in the east. Japan is made up of all volcanic mountains and islands, and Southeast Asia has the Himalayan mountains as well in the north. Another similarity between all these countries is the importance of water, rivers, and the oceans, as many of these countries have cultural ties with the ocean, and much of their economy is devoted to things that happen in the ocean, such as fishing and drilling for oil. Tying in with the ocean, many of these countries also have land on islands. Japan is completely on islands, as it is an archipelago. Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines are all nations that have land on islands as well. One difference of all of these regions is a man-made geographical feature in the Koreas, the Demilitarized Zone, or the DMZ, on the 38th parallel. It is a mile-wide stretch of land completely devoid of humans and human interaction for the past 60 years. The DMZ is one of the last areas in the world completely empty of all humans, so it is one of the largest natural areas in the world as well. While those are all geographical features, one such important issue is the island disputes between Japan and Korea, Japan and China, and Japan and many other Southeast Asian nations. These island disputes come to be because Japan says that they have owned these islands since the end of World War II when they had colonized the area. One unfortunate but truthful part of history in the Pacific Rim is that it has been ravaged by war over many, many millennia. In the feudal days between one kingdom and another, and also in the modern era between one nation and another. All of these countries have experienced war, so it is very difficult to reconcile many of these differences between these countries because many of these wars occurred between the Pacific Rim nations against other Pacific Rim nations. One importance in the modern-day Pacific Rim society is that many of these countries have booming economies, so they'll be very important in the global economy and global society. One of these economies, which is not known to be a very global superpower, is Vietnam. Vietnam has recently changed many of their laws and ideals from communism more towards a capitalistic society. This is very beneficial for the people living in Vietnam and also those other countries and other societies surrounding Vietnam, because it will result in increased trade and increased compliance between the different societies and different cultures of the countries. A very difficult part of understanding the Pacific Rim is learning the differences between North Korea and South Korea, a region that was divided by the Allied powers right after World War II. The different Koreas have very different structural ideas of how the government should be run. North Korea has ideals leaning more towards communism, and South Korea has ideals leaning more towards a democracy and towards capitalistic economic growth. These economic and political differences have led to many different wars and different conflicts. The war in the 60s with South backed by the United States and the North backed by China and the Soviet Socialist Republic. Although these two countries were once one and ethnically one people, they now have many different cultural differences. Some of these differences include the arts and also martial arts and dancing. All of the countries in the Pacific Rim have many different cultural ideas and cultural identities, so it is hard to lump them into one big group known as the Pacific Rim. China sticks to many traditional values, but also has many different communist ideals. Japan is much more democratic as to United States and their involvement in the rebuilding after World War II, and Korea has become a much more democratic people in the South because of their backing by the United States. And it's very difficult to also lump together Southeast Asia because they have many different ethnic groups and many different countries in which these ethnic groups reside in. The mainland of Southeast Asia consists mainly of the Khmer, the Burmese, the Malay, and also the Vietnamese people. And it's also very difficult because Brunei has a very different culture and a very different ethnic group altogether. There are many future problems that the Pacific Rim might face in the near times. One of these problems is in Japan of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear meltdown. Much of this nuclear radiation has spread all throughout Japan and also all throughout the North American and South American coasts. It is not just a Japanese problem now. It is all of the American, Japanese, and Chinese and Korean officials' problems now, because the radiation can affect many people at once, not just the people living near the power plant. One very good thing to look forward in the coming years is the advancements of the Burmese people's rights in Burma or Myanmar through the crusades of Aung San Suu Kyi. Aung San Suu Kyi has been fighting for the past 25 years for the advancements of people's rights in Burma and Myanmar and to rid the authoritarian government of their power.